Hi Chris, how are you?
Yeah, good morning, Rod. I'm well. Here we are in the eye of the storm. I think I've got the terminology right there. I've been mildly impacted by it. How about you?
A little bit, yeah. There's lots of trees down around the place. We had one of those governmental weather warning things go off in the app. All the phones went off at the same time. It's quite a scary noise. I missed it last time. So, yeah, there's been some crushed cars around Swansea, that's for sure. There's some quite impressive pictures of that. No deaths or serious injuries as far as I'm aware, but yeah, other than that.
Well, that's good news, no deaths. But what did the warning say? Is that one where they recommend you stay at home?
Risk to life, stay at home.
So I guess we must be on the fringes. We've got some very strong wind, we've got some trees down, but we did not receive that message. It must be quite hard to know when to send the message, because are they doing it based upon where you live? Are they doing it based upon your geolocation? I don't know how that works.
It must be cell tower location, I would guess. If you were a visitor visiting an area, you'd want to have the alert as well, not just residents of the area, wouldn't you? So I think anybody in the red zone of Storm Dara got the alert, and if you were just on the peripheries, which I think you were really sort of Gloucester way, you were in the amber region, so you didn't get it.
Right, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, hopefully all is okay. We may have some storm noise come through. My shed seems okay, but I can hear the noise whipping around outside.
Well, let's hope we all stay safe. Shall we crack on and do some follow-up?
Why don't we say it's episode 150 and it's the 8th of December.
It is the 8th of December. We're getting towards our 3-year anniversary here on this podcast, you know.
Is that right?
Yeah. We started in January to some 11 months ago.
Wow, okay. I would have guessed maybe 2, but 3 is a bit.
I'm pretty sure it's 3. I'm pretty sure it's 3. Wow. Anyway, let's do some follow-up and we can fact check that. You think we'd know. So this first story, Microsoft have said for a long time the only way you can get Microsoft Recall is to buy one of their Copilot Plus PCs. That's about to change, it would seem. This story is you can now try out Microsoft's Recall feature on Intel and AMD Copilot Plus PCs as well. So this will be on the latest generation of chips from those providers. And yeah, if you want it to record everything that's going on in your computer, I guess crack on and install the beta.
I'm quite happy that this feature won't ever work for me, so I'm all right with that.
Ever work for you even at work? They might offer it corporately for you. I
don't have a PC, so as you know, I'm 100% an iPad person, which a lot of people, even in 24, give me a funny face, more so I think than they did in 2020, because there's just not many people that can make the iPad, I think, work for them. But no, I don't have a PC in my working life at all, which is why I got the maxed out iPad, because I know I will use it all day, every day.
That's fair enough, and I'm now looking at you slightly less weirdly because you only use an iPad.
Better than using Windows.
Almost anything's better than using Windows, isn't it? Let's be fair. It's probably a bit of a rat hole for this early in the podcast, but I did have my gaming PC up and running again to try out Microsoft Flight Simulator and stuff like that. It drove me insane in about the space of 90 minutes. It was ignoring inputs, it was very crashy, it maxes out your internet connection, it wanted to stop and install drivers, the Microsoft Xbox app wants to update itself. It's just a horrible experience. And then some update installed in the background and I restarted it. And it tried to get me into install Office again, it tried to get me to sign into OneDrive again. It's just, it ignores all your settings and goes, right, let's begin again. If that's all they're going to be capturing with this Microsoft Recall thing, that you're continually rebooting and being offered Microsoft Office 365, have fun.
Yeah, maybe that's their way of doing their developer logging and seeing what your experience is like. I hadn't really thought about that, but that does make a little bit of sense. Yeah, I would concur with you on some of this. It can be painful. I have got to, after this call, go and set up Flight Sim for my son because he tried. Because I wanted him to get into installing it and setting it up himself, but apparently it's not that straightforward and it's crashing.
It's not an ideal thing. I keep meaning to look and see if it's on the Xbox. Anyway, we should save that for games. Should we talk about Brazil instead?
Brazil. What's going on in Brazil?
Well, we talked about this last week, that there was an injunction against Apple about anti-steering rules, if you recall, that they had to have links within the store to allow the people to install Netflix and others, not necessarily in the App Store. There's some drama happened here that Apple put in an appeal saying, we haven't got enough time to implement this, despite the fact that this store has been around since however long it's been around, and they've already done all this in the EU, but they didn't have enough time to do it, and then it looked like that was going to be rejected, but then all of a sudden, literally this changed in about 20 minutes yesterday. Apple is going to get more time to deal with the Brazilian regulators voting on the App Store. So the ultimate thing of this is they should be allowed to have sideloading in the Brazilian App Store, which is a good thing. You and I both agree this is good. We had that story a couple of months back about how the EU App Store is now a far more interesting place, even though they're not notarizing all the apps. But yeah, this is interesting by Brazil.
No, I'd agree with that. I had thought that when they started doing the EU, that maybe would be their template for other countries, but it seems like Apple very much wants to have two app stores. There's going to be the EU plus some other countries, and then everybody else in the main one, which is frustrating, I think, because I think the EU is the way to go, and Apple should do some self-regulation here.
There's got to be a tipping point, I think, where they just go, oh, well, we can't keep maintaining all these different app stores around the world, and they'll just flip to another model. But it looks like they're going to fight tooth and nail till they get to that point.
Yep, no, that's exactly what I was going to say. Completely agree with you.
Yeah, it's an odd one. Anyway, well done, Brazil, fighting the good fight. And who'd have thought we'd still be on the side of big regulation rather than Apple at this point?
I think we've got a few more years of this.
We've got a few more. I wonder if we'll do this in year 6 of the podcast.
Crumbs. Yeah, I can't think that far ahead.
Moving on, OpenAI has announced a full OL01 reasoning model for £200 a month if you want to make full use of this particular ChatGPT Pro tier.
With reasoning, which is interesting. It's O1 is the name of the model. I don't get why they name their models such weird names. I guess it's better than going 1, 2, 3, 4, but at least if they did that, I'd know where we are in the iterative process.
Is it better than naming them 1, 2, 3, 4? I mean, point releases, date releases. It's no better than Apple's, various iOS 17, 18, 15, wherever we are on the various OSs now. It's at least there's some sort of pattern to it that makes sense to them, I guess. So unlike the previous preview, O1 can now process images as well as text, so similar to GPT-4o, and is apparently much faster than the preview. They've got this event going on at the moment called 12 Days of OpenAI, where they're going to start doing a bunch of product launches. I mean, it's just going to be lots of large language models and subscription announcements, it would seem to me.
Yeah, more revenue-generating options. What always amazed me with OpenAI, though, is the pace that they're getting things out the door. Like, how are they having so many different tiers, so many different models? And it blows my mind how they're doing it, if you know what I mean. They're just continually putting something out the door for a relatively new company. I know they've also had massive funding, but they keep pushing something out the door. There's barely a month that goes by where they've not released something. So I find that super interesting how they maintain that pace.
Well, maybe they've got some artificial intelligence features helping them drive their code base.
Is that what it is? And the machine is self-regulating. It's self-aware. That's the words I'm looking for from Terminator.
Skynet became self-aware on.
Do you reckon that's what OpenAI are going to come out and release? We've been self-aware for the last 2 years. We just haven't told you about it. We just carried on cranking the machine.
Well, there's a difference between what they're giving to us and what they're running internally, right? I also wonder if a bit of a shine is beginning to come off some of these large language models. How many people on a daily basis actually rely on this to do their jobs, to do their studies, and to do the rest of it? I mean, I see it in work because students will submit things having used ChatGPT as their assignments and all the rest of it. But at the same time, it's very easy to tell, and that it's not sustainable. Even the students recognize they actually need to know things. You can't go about and go into your work life and rely on ChatGPT to do things for you in your day-to-day work. As a quick sort of vocabulary check, a grammar check, most people are accepting of it. But even, I think, you're getting a bit of pushback in things like search now, with Google moving to this model and ChatGPT not being the veracity of it being difficult to prove. We're kind of at a tipping point, I think, with the general public and their acceptance of these things and what they're pushing ahead and trying to do.
No, I would agree with that. I'm still seeing a lot of people using it for fun things and the odd thing rather than it becoming baked in. I've certainly seen that with Copilot in my corporate life. I've had to play with it, but I haven't used it a huge amount. The one thing I'm seeing AI related that people are using is the ability to record your meetings and transcribe them and send over that later, which I don't think I like. Like, why do we need to record every meeting? What do we do with all this data? We're just saving more and more data. I don't know if I like that. I'd rather maybe don't keep the recording but keep the transcription. That's a lot smaller, makes a lot more sense longer term, I think.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, the odd meeting, if you've got to keep minutes and you haven't got somebody to take the minutes, it makes sense. I agree with you. The transcription is generally good enough. Mac Whisper, which we use to sort of transcribe the podcast, just so I can find time points within it and coughs and sniffles and things like that, has been a terrific boon to me. But I don't keep it. I use it for subtitles, potentially for the thing, and then I just bin it.
Makes sense, doesn't it? Like, I don't know. We're just going to end up with more and more data, more and more data centers consuming more and more power. That's my concern.
Yep, totally. One thing that's not consuming more power is Apple Music. as of every year, the last 4 or 5 years, they've done a recap. The last 4 or 5 years, you've had to log into the website in order to look at that recap. It made sense to me recently when I was listening to Jason Snell talk about the launch of the App Store. But all they did was repurpose iTunes Music and how record labels uploaded things to it. So for all those years, it's just been running on an outdated back-end thing that's designed to sell you 99-cent songs. So getting it to display this sort of rich web-based content within the app was clearly a challenge. Anyway, this year, they managed to get it to work within the app. Did you have a look at your yearly roll-up?
You say work within the app. I mean, literally, you go. I was just doing it as you were talking. You go in the app, and it goes Apple Music. You tap on it, and then it brings up a web view inside the app. And don't get me wrong, it's a very polished web view, so it looks kind of cool. But then as you scroll through it, down the bottom it goes, you can open your Apple Music replay in the app. And it's like, yeah, but I'm already in the app. So it's not, unlike ChatGPT, it's not self-aware. Now, I've had a look at it. I do think some of the stats are good. I just get frustrated every year that you've got this Apple Music app, they drive everybody there, but they just seem uncoordinated with some of it. They just don't seem to be investing in the app, and it drives me mad. Yeah, I've listened to quite a lot of music from 5 very similar artists from 20 years ago, so no big shocks there for me.
Yeah, I obviously got quite into Nick Cave on mine because I was going to the gig last month, so there's a sudden flurry of Nick Cave, but other than that, it's film soundtracks like I always listen to.
So mine has recently been taken over with Doves, the British band called Doves. They've got a new album coming out, so I've gone back and listened to all their previous albums and listened to their new song. Then a bunch of Stone Roses, quite a bit of Oasis and Blur, it was very much big when I was growing up in my teens. And then a bit of Ian Brown at the end, which obviously links into the Stone Roses. So probably not too different to what it is most years. I do listen to a lot of other random stuff, but that's obviously the big hitters for me.
Well, the new Cure album came out this month, and it is absolutely terrific. What a fantastic underrated... Well, they weren't underrated. I think they were just a bit more underground back in the sort of early 90s up to Friday I'm in Love when they finally had a number one album. But what a terrific band, the Cure. Musically perfect, really good with the show. They've sort of stand toe-to-toe with some of the biggest names in rock and roll for me. And I don't think I appreciated them enough when I was younger. They weren't goth enough for me. I needed more Sisters of Mercy in my life and things like that. But yeah, that new Cure album is terrific, and I'd recommend you give it a listen.
I've just added it as you were talking.
Good man. Something else that maybe none of us need in our lives is apparently there's a lot of people who miss the touch bar on the MacBook Pro. Really? Yep.
For those that don't know, the touch bar was the function row basically on Apple laptops. Pre-Apple Silicon transition, it was on the Pro laptops, and I do think it was genuinely a cool idea. Like, why don't we take the top row and make it aware of what you're doing, whichever app you're on, and change the buttons. It sounds great, doesn't it? And it was really high-res screen. It looked cool, and obviously it just did not really go well. So Apple did it. They didn't really invest in it. It never really moved on, but I thought it was a cool idea to begin with. But I've never owned a laptop with one. And obviously it's gone away with Apple Silicon because nobody wanted it.
I don't think you're right. I think the very first MacBook Pro still had the touch bar on it because they just literally banged an Apple Silicon chip into that.
You are 100% correct. So it went away once they redesigned the casing. You're correct. They left all the casings the same, didn't they, really, for Apple Silicon? But yes, somebody's made a new one, which, I don't know, I still think this is cool. Like, part of the programming me would quite like to play with this, and... Oh, that's interesting. Verge now have a subscription has just popped up in Rod's sharing screen, and they seem to very much want you to subscribe there, Rod.
How do I get rid of it?
I don't know. I've gone on the Verge a little bit, but I'm more dip in and out. But anyway, somebody's brought out a new touch bar, which does look kind of cool on the face of it. Maybe this will be good for a desktop, because looking at the screen grab you had there, the bar's just sat on top of the keyboard. On your laptop, you're not going to carry that around with you, but if you had a permanent desk, this could be quite cool. Something that would just sit there and be context aware. I think that's quite cool.
Yeah, so I was mixed on the touch bar. I had 2, maybe 3 laptops with it, so I got quite used to it by the end of it. And most of the time, it was useless to me. I quite like the ability for it to have scrubbers on there. If you look at the screenshot, there's a volume scrubber, for example, on the left-hand side, so you could very quickly sort of get quite fine-grained access to your volume up and down. And that was true if they were playing videos. It was true if you wanted to change the backlight or the screen backlight on the keyboard or on the screen itself. So that was quite handy. But Apple never really invested in it. It never became a very cool thing that that was compelling. And the other thing I don't think they made enough of a thing about is any sort of haptics on it. It would have been quite nice if you felt little bumps when you sort of ran your fingers over the keys, the virtual keys, as they would change between apps. I do know a couple of people that really, really liked it and were a bit sad when it went away. But for me, the function keys are all that really need to be there. It would be quite nice if Apple made it a bit easier to map what their functions were. But, this isn't a thing that needed to come back, I don't think.
I agree with you. I think Apple never invested in it enough. I've put a link in the show notes to the Kickstarter page, and it does look kind of cool. It's $120, but I do think this is probably something I'd end up buying or backing, and then I probably wouldn't use it that much. That would be my concern. But I think conceptually it's quite cool. And there's various other versions you can back where it costs a bit more money. I think the idea is cool. I just wonder how sticky it would be. How much would you really use it? But I guess it's in some ways a little like one of those Stream Decks where you can have loads of buttons.
Well, I was just about to say that a Stream Deck or that new Logitech MX Creative, whatever it's called, gives you a lot of this kind of stuff. Like, so the purpose of these devices is if you're podcasting, then you can assign a bunch of shortcuts to a button. So if Chris and I were starting to podcast, I could write some scripts, press one button, and it would launch OBS, it would make the FaceTime call, it would start Audio Hijack Pro recording, and you could have another button on there that would mute all your mic inputs, which would actually be really useful for the situations where Chris and I cough and sneeze. But I don't feel that this is really something that I need in my life as a Mac user.
I'd agree with that, and I quite like Logitech things. I'll just put a link in the show notes to it. The Logitech one is £200, but does look kind of cool. Maybe with my incoming new Mac, maybe this is something I could go for.
Maybe we need a separate discussion about these sort of extra buttons and widgets and things for your Mac, rather than sort of get lost in the weeds right now.
Yep.
There's been a few reviews on this online. Maybe it's worth we do a little bit of research on these things and come back, and the Stream Deck.
Yeah, maybe that's what we could do over Christmas is potential Mac accessories. It could be quite cool.
That would have been a Black Friday show, wouldn't it?
Maybe it's a January sales show instead.
Shall we talk about Vodafone?
Vodafone, yeah. So I popped this in because I think we've spoken about Vodafone and Three a little bit. Vodafone and Three have been given the green light to merge here in the UK, which I wasn't sure if this was going to go through, but they've been given the green light. And what this will mean here in the UK, we will just have 3 mobile networks, which doesn't seem like that many. So we will just have EE, which was what was Orange back in the day, and T-Mobile, I think. Then we've got O2, which is merged with Virgin Mobile, and now we've got Vodafone, which is just merged with Three. So we're just going to have 3 networks, which, doesn't seem that many. That's all I'm going to say. So I'm surprised it's gone through. Obviously, there are other networks like you have that sit on top and use the infrastructure, but only 3 main ones. But maybe it's better for better scales of efficiency, less masts and antennas and stuff. But it doesn't seem like a lot for competition.
No, but at the same time, I can't think mobile technology is cheap. To maintain those masts, to move forward with 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, millimeter wave, whatever comes next along the way as network becomes resolved, then I can kind of understand why they'd want to share this stuff. But it's not just that, is it? It's these companies also want to offer you mobile signal, they want to offer you home broadband, they potentially want to offer you entertainment channels as well. Certainly in the case of Virgin, they have a bunch of cable network that is part of that too. And BT are the same with BT Sport, although I think they're out of that now, aren't they? It's a triple play is what they want to offer you here. They want to offer you your home stuff and entertainment and everything else. And I wonder about the success of that. Most people just want a lot of bandwidth in order that they can download their stuff or stream their media or click on their Snapchat or whatever it is they want to do or get their work done with Zoom. Is it less competition? You can still switch between 3 networks. It's not no competition.
I don't disagree with that statement, but it's not a huge amount of selection there, is there? But maybe you're right. Maybe mobile networks have got so commoditized now that don't actually need all this different competition, and it's so hard to set up a mobile network and so expensive.
And let's face it, the next thing is going to be satellite networks.
Yeah, we're already moving there at work. We're already doing a bunch of that because cellular sometimes isn't as good. It's not perfect, but we are running cellular as well.
Shall we do
as well?
Yeah, fair. Shall we do some news?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first story in the news. This is a rumor. It's a rumor I like, though, therefore we're including it. Apparently, for the first time, Apple is investigating cellular to the Mac. About bloomin' time.
I can't imagine this is the first time they've looked at this, personally. This is great. They should do this. Like, one of the big features of my iPad is I use it at home. I close the lid, I walk to my coffee shop, I open the lid, and it just works. Whether I'm going on the Wi-Fi or the cellular, I go on the train, it just works. They should definitely do this on the Mac. I can't believe they haven't done it. This has got to be, surely you're highlighting it now, where Apple for years been talking about doing their own modem. They ended up buying Intel's modem arm, but they've not seemed to make it work. But it feels like it's going to come, I think. And what best places should they be doing their own modems? Probably in devices where you won't have anywhere near as many as the iPhone, and then work your way up to putting your own modem in the iPhone by putting it on the Mac, putting it in the iPad. So it's quite exciting. They just need to do this. I can't believe we're still talking about it. I think we all thought this would come as part of the silicon transition.
Yeah, we've been hoping for it for a long time. And to be honest, a lot of the time I don't care, in the sense that I get what you're talking about with the iPad. I've had iPads with cellular chips in them, but it's another mobile contract that you need to manage, really. If you get it corporately, that's one thing, that it's there, it's working on your device, and you have got all that always-on connection, and that's fine. But for your average user in the street, that they want to know when their cellular network's being used, potentially don't want to manage yet another contract, because you may have one for your Apple Watch, you've got one for your phone, now you've got one for your laptop, you might be paying your family's ones as well. That's a lot of mobile contracts to manage. And you may come to understand this pain as your kids get older, and you are paying for multiple contracts around the place, as well as managing your work one and. So, I think there's pushing back on the mobile network story from earlier. There needs to be a better way of managing these things, where you can have a forest of devices attached to one contract effectively, and you should be able to swap them in and out as you want, or something like that. And I understand what Apple were going forward with the phone, using it as sort of the hub for all those things, but we have moved on, and the convenience would be great. If I'm on a train, trains are the place I feel this pain the most. I open it up, the train signal is terrible. I start degrading my phone for the second I start connecting to it. The battery in my Mac is huge, and wouldn't it just be good if it could manage that itself? Bring it on, and that's fine. As long as it gives an easy way to manage those things as well, that will sort of close the loop.
Agreed, but sometimes you want cellular contracts from different suppliers, because I do that. I have one in my iPad that is a different partner to my phone, so that if one's not got signal, I can hotspot off the other one if I was in a location. I just think the convenience is worth it. But I kind of agree with you. What we've never really got, other than the Apple Watch, is the mechanism that you've got the same SIM card, in essence, in multiple devices with the same phone number on it. You kind of just want that in all your devices. Look, mobile operator, give me the same SIM card, I'll put it in all my devices, these are all allocated to me. You can probably profile for my usage that I'm together with them and I'm going to be using them, and therefore can you just do me a nice package that isn't too expensive, and roll it all together. But they don't seem to do that.
I guess it's not in their interest, is it? They can charge you multiple times.
Yeah, that's true. And how many people have the wrong contracts and all of that?
It is interesting. I want to see it. Even ignoring the option of it being a bit of a hassle, we should have the option that if people want this, it should be in the laptops. They've been in PC laptops forever. The software is clever enough to manage it. About blooming time. Get on with it, Apple.
Yeah, agreed. Because the biggest one of the biggest mobile phone operators, in the world, they seem to have taken a long time to stick this on their Mac platform, which is bizarre.
Absolutely. This next story isn't technically a tech story, but it's just horrifying to me. So one of the larger healthcare providers, insurers in America, is called Anthem BCBS. And this is I just find the concept so weird as somebody who's resident in the UK and we have the NHS, that as a health insurer, they're mandating how long people can be anaesthetised for when they're having operations. So if you're in the middle of cardiac surgery, for example, they will only allow you to anaesthetise them for 45 minutes, otherwise they won't pay out on the health insurance. I am flabbergasted by the thought of this.
So I am not a medical person, as we know, and I usually keel over at the thought of anything medical. But you're telling me that my health insurer is going to tell me how long I need to be anaesthetised for, rather than the people, the anaesthetist doing the operation and the surgeons. Surely I'd rather them tell me than the bean counters?
Well, this is it. Surgery sometimes goes wrong, or needs a bit longer to do something, or something unexpected pops up. So to have the health insurer say, no, this is a 50-minute operation, you took 51 minutes, therefore we're not paying out on it, it just blows my mind completely. It's all been pushed back on all the rest of it, and they've realised that the messaging on this isn't good. And there is a bit of subtlety here. In America, they actually have anaesthetic nurses rather than anaesthetists doing some operations. So they call them anesthesiologists rather than anaesthetists, as we would have in the United Kingdom and elsewhere in the world. And that's not to say there aren't anaesthetists in the United States as well, but they have this class of healthcare providers who do this. But it doesn't matter. They're still the expert in the room when it comes to keeping the patient pain-free and asleep. And it has nothing to do with the health insurance company as far as I'm concerned. It's just part of the operation. And if ever you wanted to realise how broken the American healthcare system was, look at this article.
I'm completely with you. This is absolutely bonkers to me. My mind has been blown.
There you go. That's why I put it in. I think it's... And sorry, Americans, we don't have this in the United Kingdom. It's free at the point of delivery. We can have private health insurance as well, but the fallback is always the National Health Service. And for all of its problems and all of its issues, things like this just make you realise how bonkers other healthcare systems can be.
Yeah, agreed. Bonkers.
Bonkers. We were going to do a story about the Mac's dock and menu bar, but I'm going to skip over that because we might talk about that again later. And instead, we're going to talk about the iMac rivaling Surface Studio 2 Plus. Did you see this story?
Yeah, I did. And I must confess, so the iMac, as we all know and love, is the all-in-one. Microsoft did a Surface Studio. It looked amazing. Base had a very skinny base, and you could move the screen down and have it as a drawing tablet, move it back up. And Microsoft are discontinuing it, which is a bit of a womp. I must confess, I've seen very few of them. I have seen them in some receptions, a bit like you see an iMac in a reception in a nice fancy office. But it's a bit of a shame because it does feel like this kind of desktop is just going away, which I'm not sure I like.
There's a couple of things here, isn't there? I remember when this was released, and a lot of Mac podcasts were saying, this is the beginning. You're going to see, 29-inch iPads around the place now where you can just lie them flat and use them as drawing pads and all the rest of it. And obviously that hasn't come true either. I think our drive is to mobile. Our drive is to laptops and iPads and phones. And Samsung have led the way slightly on this with DeX, where you can even plug a phone into a nice big widescreen monitor and get your computer wherever you go. And again, the movement for me is away from desktops. You might have a nice screen on a desktop, but that's all. So then building all the cleverness into the screen, as Microsoft did with the Surface 2, and all the multi-touch stuff that they put in, and pen inputs and drawing, and the ability to get it flexed to where you want, was fantastic. But it's also very limiting and a very expensive computer to put in one place. And I think actually the Surface, with the exception of their laptops, line has been a bit muddled. Didn't they do huge Surface televisions as well?
Yes, we've got them at work. We've got Surface TVs on walls. They're just too expensive and not maintained enough.
And that's exactly it. You've got the complexity of a Microsoft Windows operating system and then maintaining that sort of additional presentation-y, something that will just work when somebody walks up and uses it against I can just stick a 300 quid LG panel on the wall and present to that. I don't need all the fancy touch stuff on these kinds of things.
No, that's what we've learned. Very few people use it, and they just go in, do a Teams meeting, share a screen, and walk back out again.
And that's exactly it. And I think that's part of the problem with this, is that if a designer wants to use a thing, they'll use their Wacom tablet or their Microsoft Surface laptop. They don't need a dedicated workstation like this particularly. They've managed with the other tools up till now. And it's so limiting because it's a desktop. You can't swap out the processor. You can't put in a graphics card. You can't do X, Y, and Z with it. Pick up an iPad, pick up your Surface laptop, and off you go. So I agree with you. I think the writing's on the wall for sort of quirky workstations like this.
Yeah, we do seem to be going back to what computers looked like 20 years ago, where it was you had a desktop or a laptop or one of each, and we're not having the stuff in the middle anymore.
Yeah. I'm going to do another medical story, and you might not like this one either, but I just think this is another cool potential use of technology. So if you're recording somebody's brain waves, that's called an electroencephalogram, EEG. And that gives you a bunch of waveforms on an oscilloscope, effectively, so you can see what's going on in various parts of the brains. They're quite sort of restrictive. You need to wear a cap. You can't move very far. It's got to be quite close to your skull, obviously, to record that kind of stuff. It's slightly challenging to get a nice clean EEG. Anyway, what they're talking about doing in this article is printing, 3D printing, effectively, tattoos onto your head, where you can just observe tattoos of the waveforms moving across people's heads instead of having it put on a cap and secure them to a machine. I just think this is really cool.
It is cool. I'm a little squeamish. The thought of a tattoo scares me. That's my squeamish levels. So yeah, it's quite cool.
it's temporary. It's not a permanent tattoo.
No, I just don't like the thought of it.
But, for a healthcare provider or us trying to understand better how brainwaves are affected without actually having to be confined to a place where the EEG cap is connected to your head, this is just an incredible piece of technology. And sort of developments like this, as with the nanobots that ate the fat that you didn't like a few weeks ago either, really are going to allow us to push forward in understanding interactions between things that we couldn't see before. For example, if you put somebody in an MRI scanner, you need to be very careful what goes in there with them. There can't be metal bits attached to them because of the magnet that's in an MRI scanner. If you've got a tattoo and you can watch other things that are going on while your brain was actually being scanned, this is just very cool stuff. It will allow us to understand a lot more what's going on.
I completely agree. No, it's very much cool technology. And it's great to see some cool tech. And like you say, this could be really insightful into things in the future. Really good.
Yeah, it really could. I'm tentatively going to bring up another Verge article now and hope we don't get the subscription thing. So this, I thought, was quite damning on behalf of the United States government. That they announced last week that you should be running some sort of encrypted messaging system, even just as a normal person out in the world. You should be using WhatsApp with two-factor turned on, iMessage, Signal, Telegram with two-factor turned on. It's quite an admission of how badly penetrated telephone networks have become.
Yeah, it felt like this one is sponsored by WhatsApp when you read the article, because this is literally got to be music to Meta's ears of basically use our app. For those of you that weren't using our app, this should hopefully get them over the line. And it is WhatsApp, isn't it, predominantly in America and very much over here.
WhatsApp is the next thing of choice for sure. That almost everybody uses that. At work, I've kind of enforced Signal on everybody because I think it's a higher level of encryption and what we should be doing. And I don't like Meta, so I want to be a little bit different. And Signal's obviously what Edward Snowden used to keep his communications private as well. And it's a lot more open source and reputable than something like WhatsApp. I still don't trust Meta in as much as, for example, we know they take your contacts, and we had that story a couple of weeks back where actually they want to store your contacts as well in the cloud rather than on your device, which they pitch as being, well, it'll be just dead easy every time you move phones or move devices, all your contacts are there with you, but also they've got better access to your contacts and understand who you're talking to, even if they don't know what you're saying. Signal don't do that. Signal don't even require you to have a phone number anymore. They've got an encrypted way of creating a user account. So that drive for privacy is certainly being taken forward more by Signal than by companies by WhatsApp. But having said all that, WhatsApp is still better than using an SMS message.
It's bonkers, isn't it? And remind me, but I think RCS will improve this, won't it? That replaces SMS.
RCS requires an encrypted server in place as well. So unless there's an encrypted server in the chain, then no, it won't make any difference at all. So bog standard RCS to RCS isn't encrypted. There needs to be that, and I think it's only Google specific servers that are encrypted at this point. So no, RCS isn't necessarily going to improve this.
Wow. Okay. So you use WhatsApp as the takeaway then.
The thing is, governments don't particularly want you to use this a lot of the time either. This is why this is so surprising by the American government, because they want to track their citizens too.
Yeah.
They want to wiretap criminals and do all that kind of stuff that, whenever we have this perpetual argument about won't somebody think of the children versus the individual's privacy. I understand the complexities of that. Trying to understand a terrorist's pattern before actually doing something and unpick that is very important. But also, the government doesn't have an automatic right to understand every little thing of every citizen's life. And this is quite a sort of heavy endorsement of what's going on in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it does show, though, that it's amazing the government are recommending this, whereas, they normally want to keep tabs on you. So it's got to be bad if the government are recommending this.
Yeah, very much. Another thing our government in the UK is potentially looking at is Apple's browser rules and the Competitions and Mergers Authority. Markets Authority, always get that wrong. You should know. You tell us, which one is it?
Competition and Markets Authority, yeah.
There you go. Anyway, they're actually going to investigate whether Apple is being non-competitive with its browser policies. And again, Well,
surely what's there to investigate? If you're on the iPhone in the UK, you can only use Apple's engine. How's that not? Why does this need an investigation? The answer's there. The EU have already, concluded this. Why do we need to pay for another investigation that goes on for a couple of years and just go, yeah, the EU called it, we should do what they're doing and force Apple to allow any browser engines? I don't understand what they're going to investigate, but
100% agree. It's interesting. The one thing I like in this little thing, though, is strategic market status. And that's that's the British version of gatekeeper status that the EU had, is it?
That's kind of brackets monopoly, isn't it, is what you're saying there.
Yeah, it totally is. We know this is going on. And again, this is Apple. This is UK just following the EU and Brazil and Korea and others that have realised, actually, there's some very dominant forces out there. And now we need to do something about it. It's a bit late, but at least they're finally getting on the bandwagon, I guess.
Yeah, completely agree. Hopefully something will happen and maybe we'll get a bit more choice.
2025, year of choice.
Is that what you're badging it as?
Absolutely not. It's the year of the Linux desktop, don't you know?
The year of the desktop. Yeah.
Shall we do our last story in news? We've got a car one. Have you seen Jaguar's rebrand?
Yes, I have. I don't really know what to comment on this. There's obviously been a massive backlash. So here in the UK, Jaguar, it's a prestigious brand, loads of heritage, and they've basically come out and gone, we've got a new logo, which they announced last month, and then in a month's time, in December, we're going to announce what our first car might look like. And what I found utterly bizarre is they're not going to do anything for a year. Then you can't even go and buy a Jag anymore. They're stopping all production, they're pivoting the company, and maybe this is what they need to do to get the company to operate for the next 100 years or whatever it may be. But it just seems mind-blowing to me that this is what they're doing. And they've released shots, as you can see on the screen, of this prototype, which looks like something from a futuristic film kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know where I stand on any of it, if I'm being honest with you. I don't know. I find the whole thing really bizarre. And I don't really know what to say on it. I don't like anything I've seen. I'm not crazy on the logo. I'm not crazy on this concept car. But what are they actually going to ship in 18 months' time? I think that's more, for me, that's more the question.
Yeah, there's a lot here, isn't there? I mean, the first thing is ditching 100 plus years worth of heritage and going all in on electric, which is fine. I think Jaguar have struggled to find themselves in the new world of, if you want to buy a reliable luxury car, you go and buy something German or something Japanese. That's fundamentally what you do. Increasingly, you might go and buy something Korean as well. And Jaguar have struggled. They don't have the sporty thing to fall back on as much anymore because they haven't had that much success, sporting-wise in a very long time. And in the UK, at least, and probably around the world, they have something of a perception of not being the most reliable vehicles in the world either. So that's
sadly, that is true.
That's a perfect storm of things. And if you really look at Jaguar's history, they've made some beautiful cars, absolutely gorgeous cars. They've got an amazing heritage in motorsport. But we have to go back to the E-Type, really, to think of a car that was sort of truly revolutionary, evolutionary for Jaguar. And I don't know if you watched Mad Men back in the day.
Yes, I love Mad Men.
Yeah. Mad Men was a terrific show, but that sort of said it all when one of the characters goes to commit suicide and tries to do it with the Jaguar and it won't start. and I think that sort of perception of the brand very much hangs over them. That even a beautiful car like the F-Type, which is a stunning looking vehicle, I'm sure it's very reliable, I'm sure it's very fast and all the rest of it. Actually, wasn't it featured in one of the last Grand Tours, I think, when they went across one of the deserts? A terrific vehicle. But I wouldn't buy one, and you wouldn't buy one. And I suspect most performance car enthusiasts wouldn't buy one. You'd go and buy a Porsche, or you'd go and buy, a Lexus RF, or something that, or a Lamborghini, or a Ferrari, or any one of 100 other brands that have a better cachet than Jaguar does. So I think they've got nothing to lose by doing this. I think they've done it really badly, having said all that.
Yeah, you've got to admire their boldness. And look, Jaguar is part of Jaguar Land Rover, so I guess they've got that other business propping them up while they're going to go through this period. Maybe the writing's been on the wall for them in that they've had very lean sales, and therefore this is the right thing. So I kind of implore that. I'm amazed they didn't do all this in the background whilst they carried on functioning as a business and then pivot. But they're clearly going to do something completely different. But I don't know. I don't know. And I don't really know what this concept's showing us because it looks like a car nobody would want. But yeah, I don't know.
This is a car you'd be embarrassed to drive in Gran Turismo, frankly. And the image I've got on the screen, I'll try and describe it for listeners. you get the driver's side on the left-hand side, passenger side on the right-hand side, 2 seats that are definitely computer-generated and nothing else. The whole thing is absolutely computer-generated. There's not a lot of actual functioning attempts to make this look like a human being could get into. But the bar that goes down the middle of it that sort of segregates the passenger and the driver, I mean, it's like one of those things in first class that you see in airplanes to sort of separate the seats out. Why would you want this in your vehicle, a high bar at that level through the, you can't rest your arm on it. Even as a concept, that's crazy. Never mind the rest of the car.
I completely agree. I mean, you may want this if it was a taxi, but not if it's a family car or, a regular car. I don't know. The whole thing seems bonkers, but let's see where they end up, I guess. But, I just don't know what else to say on it.
I wish them luck that, they're no longer a British manufacturer, but they still have that, history, certainly within the UK, of, I think fondly of Jaguar, you know what I mean? I wish that I bear them no ill will, but I just don't understand. I also don't understand why they've got GU capitalised in their name now.
Yeah,
Jaguar.
The font just drives me bonkers, if I'm honest. But I can't believe they're surprised by the massive outpouring on the internet of how bad this is and how they haven't read the room. The one thing I do like that they have said is copy nothing, i.e. we're starting again, we're doing our own thing, and if they actually achieve that would be super interesting. However, if they bring out a car that looks like an existing car, that would be pretty bad. But I do like the concept that they're doing their own thing, because not enough companies do that anymore.
The only thing I can think about, and I agree with everything you just said, is it written like this to get you to say Jaguar rather than Jaguar, like Steve Jobs used to say?
Could be. What slightly concerns me, though, is we've seen it with Dyson building an electric car and then abandoning it at the last minute. We've seen it with Apple. I'm worried is Jaguar going to go a similar way.
Jaguar have an electric car, though.
Yeah,
the I-Pace is
they've
an
got
electric car.
bunches of electric cars. They're not all that.
No, they got one.
But are they going to struggle, though, if they're going to do something completely new and innovative, like Dyson, like Apple were trying, and then they've abandoned it? So curious to just see how it's all going to play out.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I was going to bring up more stuff about Jaguar, but I think we'll call it a day on that. And should we do some media instead?
I would imagine everybody has seen all of this because it's been plastered over every form of website and social media outlet.
Fair. Let's do some media. So first thing for me, and this is sort of tangentially media, it's more about media than media itself, as we typically talk about. But there was a rumour this week that possibly Sonos could move to a subscription model for their speakers in their app. I don't like that. I've got a lot of Sonos speakers around my house, and hiding them behind a paywall wouldn't impress me in the slightest.
No, I can understand that. I would be concerned. And Sonos have got a lot right with their hardware. We've talked about it before. They've carried on just doing their thing, and it's worked out well. But how often do you replace your high-end speakers? Not very often. So is this a way of them keeping revenue more stable, I guess, and growth, as the shareholders like to see?
I think they've had too much churn recently to do this, frankly. All the nonsense with their app and, the poorly introduced headphones and all the bits and pieces they've had up till now, that they're really on the thin end of the wedge when it comes to people moving to something else. And there are alternatives these days that will do the whole room thing relatively easily and straightforwardly. The app is still a shambles. It's very difficult. It's very slow. It's very clunky. Speakers drop in and out. The reliability of the speakers for me is still better than HomePods, which just goes to show how bad HomePods are, really. But I would stop using them at this point. I've been burned too many times, fool me once and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I get it. I've not used Sonos for years. I often give them the side eye. I do like the hardware. It looks very good. But I wouldn't want anything that requires a subscription.
No, not for this. Not when I've got surround sound attached to my TV. When I turn that on, I want to play my PlayStation. I don't want to, oh God, did I pay my $5 a month to Sonos in order to listen to my speakers that cost me £300?
I completely agree with you.
Bad. Something that's, I think, good is Wolf Hall. Wolf Hall is based on a Hilary Mantel novel. It tells the story of, get this right, Thomas Cromwell and Henry VIII. I initially thought it was about Oliver Cromwell, but it's about Thomas Cromwell. I haven't watched that much of it, I'm quite honest. It is historical, it's BBC, it's very well regarded by critics on Rotten Tomatoes, very highly regarded. It stars Mark Rylance, and he's incredible in it. It is the role he was meant to play. It's just been redone as Wolf Hall something else, I forget what, so I thought I'd give it a go. So I watched the first episode. I'm very impressed, but it's one of those things that I see its value more than appreciate it at this point, I think, if that makes sense.
No, I can understand that, but it's also got Damien Lewis as Henry VIII. I've not seen this, by the way. He looks amazing as Henry VIII in the poster art, and then you've got Claire Foy as Anne Boleyn, so quite cool. And then Jonathan Pryce is in it too as a cardinal. So what an amazing cast!
It's an exceptional cast, and it's actually got a couple of actors from Slow Horses in it as well. The lady that plays the office admin, I can't remember her name. That's terrible. The character's name. Oh, my mind's just gone blank. The older lady. This is not good podcasting.
I'm reading the book at the moment. I'm reading the 5th book as we speak, and I can't. Standish is the character's name, but I can't think what the actor is called.
Catherine Standish. She's in it, for example. So yeah, it's. I've enjoyed the first episode. Haven't loved the first episode. I can understand why there's the distinction between 85% for the audience and 99% for critics. I will return to it at some point, but Wolf Hall is what I've started.
Fair enough. I'm still, so far behind on TV shows. Do you know what? I'm not sure we've spoken about it here. I did play for my son the trailer for the new Star Wars Skeleton Crew TV show. I said, "Do you fancy having a look at this? I've seen a bit online about it." He watched the trailer and went, "It's not for me." Which was interesting, because I thought, it looked like it was punching for an 11-year-old. It looked like he would enjoy it, but not at all. Didn't want to go anywhere near it, which was a shame, because I quite fancied watching something different with him.
You can still watch it. You don't need to be there with your son to watch it.
No, but sometimes it's nice when you watch something together. You know, like when we watch Bake Off, it's nice when we all get a little bit invested. So I'm a bit disappointed with that one. I've popped in the show notes a link to Fly Me to the Moon. This is now available on Apple TV Plus. Apple did something different with this. They released it, I think, so you could buy it for, say, £20 here in the UK, and then brought it to their streaming. I think they're trying something different with their films. They seem to have a hit and miss relationship with films, as we talked about last week. But it's got Scarlett Johansson in it, as you can see, and Channing Tatum. And it's all about Channing Tatum's running the moon missions. He's the director for that. Scarlett Johansson's a marketing person, and she's trying to help NASA market better and get more viewership and things. It's quite cool. It's all around the Apollo 11 piece. It's interesting. It's very slow, though. I mean, it's a long film, and it spends a long time setting the scene. I haven't got to the end of it yet, but just interesting to see. Great cast. The era looks amazing. Whether it's a film I will ever watch again, I don't know. Oh yeah, Woody Harrelson's in it too. Forgot about that. He's also fantastic.
So just as an additional aside for viewers of the video, we got a copyright warning last week when I showed the Major League trailer. So it was running in the background as Chris and I were talking, and YouTube wouldn't put the video up because I had a copyright warning because I showed too much of the Major League trailer. So I think I'm okay up to 30 seconds to spill trailers in the background, which is why I've paused the video. Sorry, audio listeners, but that's just a little bit of background for you.
That's fair enough. But anyway, this film looks interesting. It's free to watch if you've got Apple TV Plus. Like I say, I'm halfway through. So far, it's okay. It's not setting the world on fire, which is what you can say for most of Apple's movies, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. Although the Blitz movie has been very well reviewed, I understand.
Yeah, that's next on my list. I've wanted to see this because I quite like the concept of what they were doing with it. Blitz is next.
Fair enough. I haven't watched this. Isn't it an era that should appeal to me? I like the cast. I like the Apollo stuff. So yeah, I should maybe give it a go. You've put me off slightly with what you said there, slightly.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's fine. It's important information. I watched film as well last night. I watched June Part 2 even. Again, I think watching the TV show, as I talked about last week, has put me back in the mood for this. It's a terrific film. I mean, they are also very long. Taken together, they are really just one film. And the audience and critics are united on this one. It's easily an over 90% movie. Timothée Chalamet is terrific in this. I mean, he's not an actor I thought a huge amount of in the past. He was good, solid. He is terrific as Paul Atreides.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I haven't seen Part 2, but in Part 1 I thought he was fantastic. So yeah, this is on my list to watch as well.
I would watch this over Christmas as well. And I can't remember if I talked about it, but I'm going to rewatch Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves as well. I was thinking about that the other day. It was a terrific film. It was unexpected for me to a film based on Dungeons and Dragons was going to be any good anyway. I watched it, I think, over a year ago at this point. Hugh Grant's in it as well, as a bad guy. He plays a really good bad guy in it as well. I hope that's not spoilers. But yeah, I just fancied something funny and silly, so that's popped to the top of my mental list of things I'm going to watch again soon too. So you might want to put that on your Christmas watch list.
Man, I'm not going to be doing anything over Christmas other than watching TV.
It's actually something you could watch with your kids as well. It's not particularly violent or sweary or anything like that, and funny.
That is a bonus.
That is a bonus. Have we run out of media? You got anything else to tell us?
No, we're out of media. Should we dive into games?
I will just reiterate, go and listen to the Cure album. It's very, very good. Let's dive into games. So, first story. And I don't think we'll go into this in too much detail. We might actually save it for another show when we talk about the potential repercussions of this. But Valve leaked some stuff this week of new stickers being available, and there's The Verge trying to get me to subscribe again. New stickers being available powered by SteamOS. So this has sort of raised the potential that Valve are going to release a bunch more consoles, the ability to install the SteamOS on a supported hardware level, so you could have a Steam Deck under your TV and all the rest of it. And that's quite exciting, I think, based on the success of the Steam Deck.
They've tried stuff in the past, but it does feel like they've got it all coming together now, doesn't it? Like the Steam Deck's been so successful for them. They've got the catalog, they've got SteamOS now. You know, it feels like they've just been casually in the background lining all their ducks up. So it does feel like it's going to be their year.
I think the difference is Proton, how many things they got working now. Old Windows games, even new Windows games, working under Proton. That's what's made the difference. They didn't have this last time. They were relying on Microsoft to do bits and pieces, and there were very few Windows games that ran under Linux to do this. This is super interesting, the fact that Proton is now good enough. Not in every situation. You're not going to go playing Call of Duty via your under the, although I suspect if they sold enough of them, they might be eventually onto an argument with some of these other bigger companies to change the kernels to allow the anti-cheat, because that's the biggest problem with things like Call of Duty is kernel-level anti-cheat that sits there between them. But with a bit more serious hardware behind it, an ecosystem that includes a Steam Deck, a VR headset, a console that sits under the TV for relatively cheap, that plays 98% of your games, I think you're going to be happy with that.
Yeah, like I said, it does feel like they've slowly been aligning all the pieces, so it's going to be interesting to see. Is 25 going to be their year?
Year of the Linux desktop and year of the Linux console, eh?
It would be quite a thing, wouldn't it? I'd be interested to see if that happens.
We could see, couldn't we? We could see. Something that's not happening. Ubisoft, I talked about this in the podcast probably about 6 months ago. There was a new shooter in town. It was called X Defiant. It used some properties like Splinter Cell and all the rest of it for the characters. So they had, they had a bit of cachet. They had ex-Call of Duty developers developing it, and they're just about to shut it down.
It seems to be the thing. I think it's very hard for a shooter to get traction. This is the second shooter we've had in a couple of months. Concord went the same way, didn't it, earlier? It just feels like it's a hard market to get into and to actually make a grab for I guess, consistent players. But it launched a good fanfare, didn't it?
Yeah, it was good. And I actually quite enjoyed it. I'd say I played a couple of hours of it. I'm a COD fan. I'm exactly the right kind of person who'd be into something like this. It immediately felt quite money grabby, though. It was immediately trying to get you to buy skins and packs and upgrades and cosmetics and all this kind of stuff. And, I mean, Ubisoft aren't always the most trustworthy company when it comes to these things. I never went back to it because you stick to the market players and the things that where the game base is. And the game base is on COD, and the game base was at this point on Battlefield.
Yeah, that is the problem, isn't it? It's hard to get in, but it feels like they're going away in the right way, though. They're giving people that bought Founders Editions refunds. They're going to still deliver the DLC content that they've already announced. So I do give them that, I guess, that they've tried to exit in the correct way. Yeah,
I think that's fair. Something that's gone very right, however, is PlayStation, which this month, is 30 years old.
Yeah, that is bonkers, isn't it, that the PS1 is 30 years old?
Yeah, I mean, I am a bit upset about this. I do, and I remember the PS1 coming out. I bought a Sega Saturn, and my mate next door had bought a PS1, and why are you buying that? You buy things from the established game maker. You don't buy from some random. All right, Sony's a great company for making cameras, but they're never going to make a good console.
Yeah, you might have called that one wrong, mate.
Well, put it this way: 6 months later, I bought a PlayStation 1. And the thing that made me do it was Gran Turismo. That's what made me buy a PlayStation. I went to a friend's house, he had Gran Turismo, I put it on, and I was blown away by how good it was.
Whole reason for my buying a PS5, Gran Turismo.
Fair.
Love it.
And the other thing was...
consistently played for 2 years.
Not to go off on too much of a tangent as well, but PlayStation made gaming cool. I remember going into nightclubs and there were PlayStations in nightclubs and the visuals were there and they were showing Wipeout and they really hammered home that it's okay to be in your 20s and play computer games. And that wasn't something I'd ever been comfortable with growing up. Video games were for kids and then nerds and nobody else. And me sitting playing Doom as I was at this time, on my PC, compared to people firing up Wipeout or Crash Bandicoot or Gran Turismo or whatever came, or Tekken was the other big launch title as well. Virtua Fighter, Virtua Racer. What was the other one? Ridge Racer. Ridge Racer was huge on the original PlayStation as well. There were some cracking games on the original PlayStation. Great bit of consumer hardware, and Sony wrote the book from that point on how to win the console war.
Yeah, and you're right. This was that transitionary device of when it wasn't just aimed at kids and nerds, as you put it. It was a console for everybody kind of thing. And that's when adult gaming became more of a thing. And obviously, here we are 30 years later, and adult gaming is huge now. Because you want the adults with money that can afford the expensive consoles, the games. And gaming is, not just something you leave behind when you're at 10, 20, for example. It carries on with you for the rest of your life.
It does. And you think all the mothers and sort of casual gamers who now game on their iPhones and all the rest of it, how much of that is down to Sony making gaming acceptable,
Yeah, that's fair.
It is. I don't know if you've seen it on your PlayStation, if you've logged in this week, but they've also brought back a feature update, they called it, where you can make your PlayStation make all the noises of all the consoles going back to the PlayStation 1. So you can choose at login, do you want it to sound like a PlayStation 1 when it boots up? It'll give a more PlayStation 1 interface, or 2, or 3, or 4, or the 5 as it stands at the moment. I just think this is a lovely nod to their heritage.
This is cool. It's nice when like you say, there is a nod to heritage. I think it's quite a cool thing. So I didn't know this was a thing, so thank you for that. And once this is over and I can kick a kid off a PlayStation, I'm going to go and check this out.
Well, I've done it, and I've set my PlayStation 5 to look like a PlayStation 1, which is quite nostalgic for me, particularly the launch, and you get a little 30th anniversary logo when you log in as well. It's a nice little shout out to their past.
For me, it would probably be the PlayStation 2. That was the one for me.
It was a good console.
It was a fantastic console.
You could buy an add-on for it that gave you networking, Ethernet networking as well, couldn't you?
And with that add-on, you could also put a hard drive in it as well.
Yeah, I remember that. I think I've still got a PlayStation 2 in the loft, in fact.
I must have sold mine donkeys years ago.
You don't keep your tech, mate. You don't
I
keep
don't
your tech.
keep tech. I generally shift it along because I generally don't touch it. And I usually want the money to buy the next bit of tech. So that's how I am. Next up on our list, Commando is just a very brief update. It has been delayed. It was meant to be coming out in 24. And I was getting concerned. They haven't said anything. We're in December. And then they came out and said it's been delayed to March 25. And there's a whole bunch of stuff we're doing, which if they're going to do all this stuff, I worry they've got enough time to do it. But I'm really keen on this game. I'm waiting for it to drop so I can go and buy it. I love the demo. So I'm a bit sad it's not coming just now, but I'd rather them take their time and get it right because I'm looking forward to playing this and I can wait a few more months.
Fair enough. Should we do a main show?
Yes, main show. So this is based upon some work I was doing this week for my parents, and I thought maybe it would be an interesting topic for anybody out there that has got two people using one iCloud account on multiple phones, which is how this has started out. I don't know why we ever did this. My brother and I are kicking ourselves. So our parents were logged into two iPhones with the same iCloud account. Because, and this is probably an older generation thing, and I've got this similar problem with my in-laws where they share an email address, whereas that's what you did back in the day. The family had an email address. And here we are many, many, many years later, about 20 odd years later, and that shared email address doesn't make sense anymore. And actually, you want people to have individual email addresses and individual messaging. So anyway, our parents were sharing the same iCloud account in essence, and we've been putting it off to split them because it just felt a bit too tricky to do. And my brother and I said, right, we'll do it over Christmas. And I thought, we don't want to spend our Christmas time sorting out iPhone separation accounts and iPads and laptops and what have you. So I bit the bullet and I did it this week. And do you know what? The long story short is it wasn't that bad, because my first point in the show notes is plan, and make a list. And as soon as I got a list, I just thought through the steps, which I've listed out in the show notes. It was actually quite straightforward. So what I was dealing with was Mum and Dad both have an iPhone and an iPad and a laptop with the Windows iCloud account in it. So I just thought through everything. What I was doing was I set my mum up with a new Windows laptop, so I installed her new account on that, and this was the problem. My dad's account was the primary one, so I installed the iCloud account on that, got it all set up, but you can't actually create an iCloud account on the Windows desktop. You have to use an iDevice to create a brand new account. So I then fired up an old iPad, set it all up, and got my mum up and running. So she had an account. She had that start piece, if that makes sense. And then I started thinking through the steps. So first off, I backed everything up, make sure the iPhones are backed up to iCloud, the iPad, etc. Barely touched my dad's phone in this process, because all I'm doing here is trying to I was explaining to my parents is I'm digitally separating you, because they couldn't understand what we were trying to do. So backed everything up. Then once I'd got my mum's new account set up, I could then go onto my dad's phone and go, right, create a family and add my mum in as a family member. So big tick there. They can then share location. You can then share any family purchases, so it's a big tick there as well. Then I could go into my dad's Find My account and share their AirTags that they use for when they travel.
Can I break in and ask about the shared purchases? That was a serious problem for me back in the day when I tried to do this I can't remember who I did it, was doing it for. I think it was a colleague at work. Who gets the purchases?
My parents got maybe one purchase, so there was not much in there. I think they use a lot of free apps, so this was actually not really a thing. This was probably more a thing back in the day when you weren't paying for subscriptions, I think, for things. But anyway, got that set up, so just enabled shared purchases, so that, and I do it with my family. If I buy something, they can just download it. They barely do, to be fair, because my kids want very different things from their phones than what I want. But that was all actually quite easy to set up, and it actually made this separation a lot easier, because you can share purchases, you can share your location, you can share AirTags now. When I first bought AirTags, you couldn't share them; they were just linked to one person, so that helped. I then went into iCloud photo sharing. It's in settings, and I could share the whole of my dad's album with my mum, because she'd had access to it anyway. So I shared all that, and I set the default so that all photos become shared by default, which is fine because that's what they were doing anyway. So at that point, I said, right, I think I've got all the server-side iCloud set up. So I put my dad's phone on one side. I took my mum's phone. This was the bit I was dreading. I made sure it was backed up, and then I reset the whole thing. I did debate, do I just leave her phone as it is and switch the iCloud account over? But I just thought that would cause me untold pain. I thought it'd be quick in the short term, but untold pain further down the road. So completely reset her phone. I've got that later. Rod's just put Apple Pay in the notes. I will touch on Apple Pay shortly. So reset my mum's phone. That did not take very long. And as part of the reset process, it does force you to back it up as well. So did all of that, started fresh. And then as soon as it came up, I logged in with a relatively new iCloud account that was obviously linked to my dad's account as part of it. And then logged in. And this bit was actually quite straightforward, because I wanted just to make sure that when you go into the messages settings on both phones, that their phone numbers had been removed from each other. So that actually worked without me really needing to do anything. And Rod, I know you and I have struggled sometimes when you try and uncouple iCloud from a mobile phone number, but instantly Apple must have had something goes, oh look, this person signed in with this iCloud account. I will remove that cellular phone number from the old one. So that all worked immediately. So the phone was up and running. And what I had done actually, and I should have mentioned this under the plan stage, is I took screenshots of all the apps my mum had installed on her phone, so I could go back and re-download them. So I went off and did that. So I downloaded a couple of apps she had for reading local news, and she likes the BBC Weather app and things like that. So I downloaded all of those. That worked. And obviously any passwords that they had saved were in my dad's password vault, so I could bring those over to my mum's. A big thing my mum didn't have, though, when I opened the phone app, there was any contacts, because they were all in sync to my dad's iCloud account. So I sent over, just by text message, I tried using AirDrop, but it was very hit and miss, but just text over the contact card, the VCF file. Apple, though, to be fair, when you share a contact card, you can tick which fields you want to share, which was very well done. Text all those over, added them all in, and that got her phone book up and running.
Why did you did them individually then?
Yeah, I couldn't see any way of selecting multiple ones, and they don't have a Mac. So I think this was the only way I could easily do it. And we're talking about 50, so it wasn't a huge amount to do. So that got mum up and running with the phone. Next up was wallet. So I think they'd been sharing my dad's cards previously with Apple Wallet. They don't use the wallet a huge amount, but I want them to have it as a backup. So I just added mum's cards on their own. That took a few minutes to do, and I made sure I set up a default card and express travel, even though they may not use it, but at least it's all set up ready should they use it. And the wallet bit was actually far easier than I thought it was going to be. I don't know why, I just thought, it's going to be a pain. It's another thing to do. Then next up, my mum was very concerned about car parking, because to go into our local town, you need your car parking app. I've linked to it. This app is absolutely horrible, but it's the app you've got to use to park where we live. It's trying to do everything for you, and every time you book a car parking space, it's trying to upsell you a text message notification for 20p, or it's just a horrible app to use. So I got all that plumbed in, made sure I added the number plates in for the cars, because I've got 2 cars. Got that set up, done. Done the phone book. So actually it was all coming together. I then went through and made sure I added in emergency contacts, in case phone's locked and she has an accident, which is myself and various other families. I then added legacy contacts in too. You can do this, if you can't get into somebody's iCloud account and they're no longer with us. So it's just things like that, just making sure I ticked all that. It wouldn't let me though turn on advanced account protection because of the Windows client on her PC. So I've got to go and deal with that at some point. But got a lot of it done. And you know what? This whole thing probably just took a couple of hours. And her phone's up and running. And I haven't touched the iPad yet. So I'm seeing my mum later today and I'm going to wipe her iPad and just set it up as her. Because I now know the phone's there. She's up and running. I didn't want to do both devices at once, just in case there was something I missed. But do you know what? I've been putting this off for years, and I wish I'd bitten the bullet sooner because it wasn't as scary as I thought.
Yeah, that's quite smooth. It's certainly smoother than I was expecting it to be. When I've done this in the past I think I said before, one of my daughter's boyfriends had the same iCloud details as his mum, and they'd get each other's text messages.
That's not good.
And that's not good for an 18, 19-year-old boy to be getting the same text messages as his mother, for lots of reasons.
It's not good for anybody in that relationship, is it?
No, it's bad. It's bad all round for whatever else is going on there. So stuff like this is really important, and I think it's interesting though that you've managed to do this so successfully. Really, obviously you've got a bit of knowledge, understanding. You did the plan thing, because I think a lot of people would just start and not have the backups and then get themselves in a horrible mess, which is why people don't, and obviously even you put it off for a long period of time because it was quite an intimidating thought that you had to do all these things. I think it's fair play to Apple for making it simpler to do that, and they realize this is a problem that they created. If they'd sort of planned for multi-user devices right from the start, iPads that lots of people could log into, what a thing on a computer, imagine. It could have made things an awful lot easier, couldn't it?
100%. And I think actually a lot of recent advances have helped, like the sharing AirTags, sharing photo albums. Those things just made it massively easier. Oh, and one thing, apologies, I forgot to mention it. With the photo sharing, you can once I let it all run through and upload all the photos and everything, you can dedupe any photos. Because on my mum's laptop, I uploaded another library of photos, and I thought actually I'll just let the dedupe thing run, and then I can just remove out any duplicates that are absorbing lots of storage. Because I wanted to do the family piece, so they pay the extra £1 a month. For slightly more storage so they can back up their phones, and I wanted them to just be able to share that. So I think a lot of what they've done with family sharing, photo sharing, AirTag sharing have made this process a lot easier. But you often see it with people, don't they? They go, oh, look, my child wants an iPad. I'll just give them my old iPad. They don't reset it. And I think the biggest thing I've learned with children is they need their own identity much earlier than you realise. You may give them an iPad when they're, say, 5. You need to set that up as them when they're 5. Even if it's a second-hand one, wipe it, set it up as them, because you are just making a problem for your future self, as I've demonstrated here. But not that bad to do. That's my biggest takeaway. If anybody's thinking of doing this, do it. Plan it. Make sure you set aside half a day to do it. I would 100% recommend this.
No, I think that's good advice. And I also think it's good advice for the time of year we're at, where you're likely to be getting a loved one or a friend or something a new device, and this is your chance, to figure these things out. And it's never too early to start. Apple do allow you to have child accounts where their purchases are restricted. The screen time can be managed, although I think the screen time app is a shambles. We should probably want to talk about that at some point as well. But this is a good thing. It's a good exercise to have been through. It's a good thing to understand.
Yeah, and like I say, just so much easier than I'd appreciated. And hopefully this has made my future life a little bit easier now when I do set things up for either of my parents. So yeah, wasn't too bad. I'd recommend somebody put aside half a day to do it, and you may well get it done a bit quicker.
Good. So that's iCloud. It looks like you have a second question for us to go through here.
Yes, so I do have a second question, and this is a future problem, so probably quite quick, but I was just asking for a steer. So my father-in-law is coming over later. I finally convinced him to buy a new MacBook. He's got a MacBook Air M2 coming. We went for a terabyte hard drive. That was the biggest thing holding him back. So he needs to back up all his photos on it. Big photographer, my father-in-law. So he's got the last ever MacBook Pro that came with a DVD drive in the side, pre-Retina. So it gives you an idea of how old it is. It's about a 12-year-old machine. I think it's as old as my eldest son, because he bought it when he retired. And for years I've been asking him to upgrade it, because I said you'll get lots of performance, and obviously with Apple Silicon now. So he bought that. It's been delivered. It actually used the site I recommended to people, KRCS, because they had a Black Friday sale, and they do 0% interest financing over 12 months. So he's bringing those two laptops over to me later, and I need to ideally just get everything off his current Mac onto his new Mac, all set up as him. I'm amazed, in fairness to Apple, how well the old Mac has run, because it's running, it's not got to version 11 of the OS, so it's running like version 10.15, I think, if I remember correctly. So we've got 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15, so that's about 5 years worth of OS updates, but all the iCloud infrastructure has carried on working, so it's not pushed him there. But anyway, I'm going to get these two devices. So one's obviously very old, one's obviously very modern. How should I do this? I was thinking I'm going to plug them both in on a desk. I'm going to make sure they've got power. One's obviously got old MagSafe. One will have new MagSafe or USB-C. And then I was thinking, well, do I Ethernet it? The old laptop's got Ethernet built in. I've got a USB-C to Ethernet adapter, because I think that will be the most common way of hooking them up and should be quickest to do transfers of tens of thousands of photos.
Yeah, that's going to be slow. You don't do this over Wi-Fi. No. Absolutely don't do
Especially
this over
on the
Wi-Fi.
old device, because it will be N, whatever N was at best.
It's probably not even N. It's probably AC or something like that. I wouldn't, or even before that. G was before that.
Yeah, G. It could be G. G came before N, and then AC came after N, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it did. And now we've got 6E, and now there's 7 even. So, things have moved on again since. Absolutely don't do this over Wi-Fi. In fact, Ethernet is probably the fastest way, because the I/O on that device, even if you plug in a USB.
And I've got no Thunderbolt to do, because in the old days you might have done Thunderbolt, but the old laptop will have USB 2. The new one's going to have USB-C 4. Yeah,
it'll be 5 gigs, 10 gigs at least on the new one. Thunderbolt 4.
Wow, okay.
It might even be 40 gigs on Thunderbolt 4. So they're on a different league. Do you have to run Migration Assistant?
I don't know. I was kind of asking that question. Part of me wants to, because is that going to be the cleanest way to do it? He's not going to have lots of apps either, because he uses the iWork suite for any documents. Because I got him onto that years ago. I said, you should just use the iWork suite. It's free. It's pretty good. He uses Apple Photos. That's where his tens of thousands of photos are. There's no Adobe.
Is it iCloud, or is it just stored on device?
No, it's all iCloud, because it's all on his phone. So I think that might help. I've got gigabit internet.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of two choices. Well, there's 3 choices. If he had a time machine backup, you could back up from that and restore from that.
I do have a local time machine backup. So when my father-in-law comes over, because he's got so many photos, I time machine his device, usually over Ethernet, because his laptop's so archaic, to my Synology. So I just take a backup for him. I've never tried to restore it. It's just more that peace of mind of I've got your back.
I think the path of least resistance is just use Time Machine, and hopefully everything comes over. My inclinations, because it's me, is occasionally start again, because it has been such a long period of time. There will be cruft in there.
But I'm worried if I start again, will it cause me pain? He lives about an hour away from me, near my office actually, so it is possible I could pop in after work. But I think in my head I was thinking of using laptop migration in essence. So when you boot up both Macs, you launch Migration Assistant on the old one, you launch it on the new one, and you basically go, here's my new one, just grab everything off that. One thing I was going to do though when I plug them into Ethernet is just make sure I turn off Wi-Fi on both devices to force it to use the Ethernet to talk to each other.
I think it will anyway. It's always meant to default to the faster thing. So it should anyway. Migration Assistant I've had success with in the past. I've used it on a couple of laptops. It's always worked okay. Yeah, Migration Assistant, I think, is probably the way to go. You do have the luxury that you could always just nuke it and start again if Migration Assistant goes poorly. You don't lose anything on the old laptop. That's the thing. If you find you've done Migration Assistant, you'll have an idea how long it's taken. If everything looks like it's working, I suppose your job is done. I mean, obviously not all your accounts and things like that come over perfectly. You'll need to log them back into the odd thing again. But at least his browser favorites will come over and all that. Migration Assistant is not as good as upgrading your iPhone from the previous one. There will be quirks like that. Yeah. So it's not a panacea. It's pretty good, but it's not a panacea.
You've got me questioning myself. So I think coming into this call, I was thinking, I'm going to do Migration Assistant. Why wouldn't I do Migration Assistant? But actually, do you know what? Because most of his life is in iCloud, why wouldn't I just iCloud it all back down? I've got gigabit internet. Well,
it will take a while to do iCloud. It'll need to reorganize his library. You could even just take his iCloud photo library, the blob that is the iCloud photo library, because that's already zipped up effectively for you, and just drag that over, copy that directly over from one machine to the other with Ethernet.
But even if he leaves my house without it fully downloaded, they've got good internet where they live. You could just leave it plugged in and going. I could drop in on Tuesday when I'm passing and make sure it's all updated.
Yeah, I'd still be inclined to move his iCloud library over manually, because that's the big thing. And once that's all, because what's going to happen is he'll open up his Mac and he'll go, "Where's all my bloody photographs?"
He's got so many. I'm not sure he'd know if they weren't all quite there. And I wonder how iCloud works. Does it download the latest ones first? I don't know.
I don't use iCloud Photos enough to be able to be an expert on that, but I do know they're all on that laptop, and you can just do an iCloud library import, couldn't you? You could dump the whole thing over, do a little bit of Googling about how to do that, and just dump the whole thing over. And then the most important thing is there for him.
Interesting. So, is there anything else I need to do? Any other default settings that are going to be different and new? So what I think I'm going to do is check the size of his iCloud photo library when I get the laptop here and work that out. I think all the apps, he's got so few apps on this thing that I don't think that's going to be an issue. I'm slightly nervous with the version of Photos he's running and the version of Photos we're on now is going to be so out of kilter. That's probably the biggest minor concern. But you're right, I'm planning very much to get him on his new laptop and just put his old laptop on one side and say, look, just hold on to it for a couple of months, make sure we've got everything up and running, and then I'll set you up. I'll wipe it and we can give it to somebody or recycle it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a little bit of reading, on-the-spot reading as we're going, and if it's a really, really old version of iPhoto, then you need to do an import rather than sort of open in. But it looks like it should be more or less supported. My feeling would be a look into that. It's only the photos that really matter. His bookmarks and stuff aren't going to be anything particularly...
Well, they can sync via iCloud.
Does he just use Safari?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. There's settings you need to turn on a new Mac to say download all my photos. I've bought so many laptops over the years that they don't all download again. To the new. It's only when I go and look for them, and then I scroll back and I'm like, this stuff's missing. So my temptation would be to copy all that over and do a little bit more research about it.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah. I'm going to have a look at it, I think. Like I said, I'll see how big it is. I can probably just drag it over the network. It probably wouldn't take that long.
And again, try the Migration Assistant. If it all looks like it's gone swimmingly, then fine, you can walk away from it. You have nothing to lose. Whereas if you do find yourself in a really weird state where things are broken and things aren't working, nuke it. Immediately nuke it and just copy the photos library over and then set it up as a new laptop. You have nothing to lose. Because he can walk away with his old laptop at the end of the day and say, I'll do it again in a day or two. No harm, no foul.
That's true. Is there anything I should clean up on the old laptop before doing Migration Assistant? I'm guessing not.
No, just go for it.
Yeah.
It will tell you if things aren't supported.
Because I don't really want to install Rosetta as well on the new one. I'm trying to force him to have all the new stuff.
You're very against Rosetta. It doesn't make any difference.
I guess so, but it's just nice not to have less stuff running if you don't need it. That's all I was thinking.
It's not running unless you do need it, though. That's it. It's just in the background. The first time he goes to install some app that you don't know that it works and it doesn't work, you'll get it the next. What's this Rosetta thing? What? Think about it.
That's a fair point, actually. I need to plan ahead a little bit.
Make your life easier. The fact that for the one thing that he uses all the time, for my father, it was some stupid scanner application that he's got to make his old Canon scanner work. Installed Rosetta on his new Apple Silicon, happy as Larry, never heard from him again. Your tech life will be easier if you just get those things installed now. It's no skin off your nose. It takes almost no resources up. It's not like some awful old cronky bit of software not supported by Apple, is it? Rosetta is a thing.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, I think you've convinced me there.
Good. Anything else in technical follow-up?
No, I think that's it for now. I'll let you know next week how I get on.
App of the week.
Do it.
App of the week this week is called Skeets. I'm quite into my Blue Sky at the moment. Skeets is a third-party app in the same sort of vein as Ivory and others. There is a pro version which you can pay for, or month by month or on an annual way, or you can use the free version that gives you almost everything except no notifications. So if you've still got the proper Blue Sky client installed, you'll still get notifications while you try it out. Nothing to lose, works very well. Lets you be a bit more granular for some of the Blue Sky stuff, like Blue Sky for me shows too many replies. As default within the thread, if somebody replies to somebody's post, you see some of the replies as well. Not all of them, but it gives you sort of a flavour of the conversation. I don't like that. I'd rather dip into conversations on my thing. Skeets lets me control that. So good little app, works quite well on my phone. So far so good with it. I haven't sprung for the pro version yet. I'm still sort of moderating my use of Blue Sky to a certain extent. I still prefer Mastodon, I think. But yeah, very good. Skeets.
Skeets. I'm not sure I love the name, but fair enough.
Yep.
I do like the icon though. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Sort of cloud-based, isn't it? I like it too. Blue Sky.
I think Apple have ruined icons with the latest iOS 18 update because they're all just starting to blur into the same sort of some random coloured shape in the middle. So I like that. I think it looks cool.
Nice. Thing of the week?
Thing of the week for me. So I've gone with an app as well. Festivitas. I think I've said that right. I just thought this was kind of cool, and it reminded me of the old days of a Mac when you get little utility apps, which we haven't had many lately, and this just allows you to have some Christmas lights on your dock or across your menu bar. It's a guy I've been following on Mastodon for a while, and he even on Mastodon said, I didn't think a week ago I'd be releasing an app this week. So it's something he's obviously made, turned it into a product, sold it for I think it's about €4 is the recommended price, and I just think fair play. Like, he's pushed out an app, he's made some updates to it already. But this is what the Mac used to be in the old days, wasn't it? You could just go and buy a little app that would just do a silly little thing. And the Mac had loads of these apps, and they've kind of gone away a little bit in more recent time. But I just thought this was kind of cool.
I agree with you. These apps are kind of cool. I did see John Gruber post about this as well. He managed to annoy me in like a one-line post saying, your dock should always be on the right-hand side as God intended. Only maniacs would have the dock on the right-hand side as far as I'm concerned. The left-hand side is where the dock belongs, John. Come on.
I like it at the bottom.
You're wrong. It should be on the left-hand side, not on the right-hand side, and not on the bottom. But I'll accept the bottom because it's the default place.
It is the default, and also for me, it's the set on my iPad. You've got no choice, so it's muscle memory. It's also got 95% 5-star rating for 230 odd people. So it's just a bit of fun, isn't it? And like I say, it's just a bit of nostalgia of what the Mac used to be, and I would like to see more of this kind of thing.
I think we can call that a show, Chris.
Yeah, I think so. So if anyone wants to get in contact, Rod is at g5maniac@mastodon.scot, or he's on Blue Sky at g5maniac.bsky.social. I don't like that name. Not your name, by the way, the B Sky piece. I am on Mastodon at _CGP at mastodon.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to our website and clicking on the YouTube link, or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.